This happened just a few months ago. I'd been driving all night on Highway 70 heading towards Kansas City. I usually loved the quiet of the road, but I got a radio alert about an accident ahead. It was better to pull over, so I looked for a rest stop. That's when I saw a diner that I'd never noticed before. It was small and dim, the neon sign flickering above the door. I thought it would be a good place to grab some coffee. I stepped inside and felt a chill. The place was barely lit, and a few truckers sat at the counter. They were whispering to each other like they were sharing secrets. I slid onto a stool and a waitress came over. She had gray hair pulled back tight. I could see the lines on her face, and the way she smiled felt strange. Something in her eyes unsettled me. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice low. "Coffee, please," I said, trying to shake off the weird feeling. As I leaned over the counter, I listened to the truckers around me. They spoke in hushed tones about strange things on the road. Lights showing up out of nowhere, shadows in the rear view, and one guy even mentioned a trucker who had vanished. My stomach knotted, but I told myself it was just tired men telling tall tales. But then, the lights flickered again. I glanced at the jukebox in the corner. It started playing an old song that hit too close to home. A flash of a night I'd rather forget crossed my mind. I looked back at the waitress. She was staring at me now, her smile still there, but her eyes seemed to see right through me. My heart raced. "I don't know what's going on," I whispered to myself. I finished my coffee, but the unease settled deeper in my chest. I stood up, ready to leave. As I walked towards the door, I heard my name murmured from the other side of the counter. My heart dropped. I turned to look, but they were still just talking, their eyes darting between me and each other. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face. I hurried to my truck but felt someone watching me. I glanced back at the diner one last time. The lights flickered again, and the truckers were still inside, their voices low. I climbed into my rig and started the engine. As I pulled away, dark thoughts crowded my mind. I had been on the road for so long. Did I imagine their stories? Did something follow me from that diner? I tried to shake it off, but the chill wouldn't leave. What if I wasn't alone? I drove further down Highway 70 with that feeling gnawing at me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape what happened that night. I still wonder if I really got away. As I drove on, the road twisted and turned beneath me. The headlights of my truck cut through the darkness, but shadows lurked at the edges of my vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was behind me, pressing in, and the hair on my arms stood up. I pulled off at the next rest area, needing to clear my head. The lot was nearly empty save for a couple of other trucks parked under the dim lights. I stepped outside and took a deep breath, trying to wash away the memories of the diner. Not wanting to be alone, I walked over to a truck that had a man sitting outside. He looked tired, eyeing the darkness like it was something to fear. "Hey," I said, hoping for a distraction. He glanced up, then nodded. "You on a long haul?" "Yeah." I rubbed the back of my neck. "Just came from a diner back there. The stories these guys were telling, it was strange." The man raised an eyebrow. "Stories? What kind?" I hesitated. Was I being too paranoid? "Just weird stuff. Lights, shadows. One guy said a trucker disappeared." He chuckled, but it wasn't a friendly sound. "That's old news. Happens more than you'd think. There's something out there on those roads." I narrowed my eyes, feeling a chill creep down my spine. "What do you mean?" Things that shouldn't be. Best keep your eyes open, or you just might see something you don't want to." His expression shifted suddenly to one of concern. "You got a CB radio?" I shook my head. "No, why?" "Get one," he said, leaning closer. "You'll want to keep in touch with other drivers. Some of them have seen things. They'll warn you." Before I could respond, the quiet was shattered by a loud bang. I jumped, spinning around. The noise came from the woods near the rest area. It was too rhythmic, too purposeful to be an animal. I felt a tightness in my chest, the kind of fear you can't shake off. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Probably nothing, he said, trying to sound casual but failing. Just the trees. Could be anything. But I didn't believe him. I could sense something was off. The air turned colder, thicker. I looked back at my truck, my heart racing. I had to get out of there. Listen, I started, but then my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down at the screen. Drive away. It's not safe. I froze. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. I looked back at the man, but he was gone, vanished into the night. Panic surged through me, and I sprinted to my truck. I fumbled with the keys, desperate to get the engine running. As I glanced back at the woods, I saw a figure lurking near the trees, watching me. I couldn't make out any details, but I felt its gaze piercing through the darkness. I slammed the door shut and revved the engine. The truck roared to life, and I peeled out of the parking lot, leaving the rest area behind. But even as I drove away, the unease smothered me. What had I just encountered? And who sent that text? A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I realized whatever was out there didn't want me to know the truth. The road unspooled before me as I sped away from the rest area, but the sense of relief I expected never came. Instead, unsettling thoughts gnawed at me. Who had sent the text message? Where had that man gone? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, so I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone following me. Miles passed, and the weight on my chest didn't lighten. When I finally spotted a small town ahead, I decided to pull over. I parked outside a convenience store, hoping for a moment of normalcy. The jangling of the door echoed as I stepped inside. The fluorescent lights felt too bright, and the aisles seemed oddly empty, making my skin crawl. "Can I help you?" The cashier, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked up from her magazine. Just getting some snacks," I mumbled, grabbing a bag of chips and a bottle of water. I hesitated, recalling the man's warning. "Have you ever heard of any strange things happening on the roads around here?" Her expression shifted, confusion flickering across her face. "What kind of strange?" Just stories about lights, shadows, people disappearing." She frowned slightly. "Trucker stories?" "Yeah, I've heard 'em. Some folks claim to see things out on those roads, things that don't make any sense." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean by things?" "Lights that dance in the sky, figures in the trees. They say if you're not careful, you might just invite them in," she said, her tone growing somber. "I don't believe in that stuff," I said, though my pulse quickened. "Then you're lucky," she replied, glancing around as if someone might overhear. "They tend to find those who don't." With that, she handed me my change, and I felt her gaze linger as I left. Outside, the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the pavement. I climbed back into my truck, the comforting hum of the engine a welcome sound. As I resumed driving, I couldn't escape the strange feeling tightening in my chest. I replayed every detail over and over in my mind. What had the woman meant by inviting them in? Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. A new message from the same unknown number flashed on the screen. "Look in your back seat." My heart dropped. I twisted around to glance behind me. Empty. I gripped the wheel tighter. It felt like a game of cat and mouse, and I was the one being hunted. Were the shadows simply a trick of the light, or was something real lurking in the dark? In the distance, I saw headlights approaching. I was desperate for any sign of other drivers, a way to feel less alone. As the truck passed, I noticed the driver's face was eerily pale, almost gaunt, as if they had just seen a ghost. But instead of slowing down, he sped up, rushing past me as if escaping something behind him. Then it hit me. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than I could comprehend. Driving into the darkness now felt like descending into a trap. I picked up my phone, ready to send a message to whoever was warning me, but the screen flickered and went dark. Panic clawed at me again. That's when I saw it, a flicker of light in the rearview mirror. It was not the headlights of another car. The light shifted, darting closer. My breath hitched. I wasn't alone on this road. I slammed my foot on the gas, desperately trying to outrun whatever was gaining on me. The light in the rearview grew brighter, almost blinding. I could feel my heart racing as I tightened my grip on the wheel. What was chasing me? I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to make a decision. Should I swerve off the highway, find a place to hide, or keep driving into the dark? The glow was now just beyond my back window, casting eerie shadows inside the cab. I crested a hill and spotted a diner up ahead. It was a small, weathered building, but it was open. The neon sign flickered like a lifeline in the dark. I swerved into the parking lot, tires screeching. I jumped out of the truck, adrenaline pushing me forward. The bell above the door jingled as I rushed inside, nearly colliding with the waitress, who stood by the counter with a surprised look. The couple at the booth turned to me, their forks frozen in midair. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked. I caught my breath, staring at the door. "Did you see that light outside?" I blurted. "Something's following me." She exchanged glances with the couple, and their expressions shifted to something that looked like pity. "You mean the headlights?" "No, I mean—" I hesitated, realizing how crazy it sounded. It was different. Like a presence. The waitress placed her hand gently on my arm. "You're not the first to mention it. People come in here all the time talking about the same thing." "What do you mean?" "The lights," she said, leaning in closer. "They say it shows up at night, drawing you in. It's like a trap." Before I could ask more, the door swung open. A man stepped in, soaked in sweat and mud. He was panting, eyes wide with terror. "You guys have to believe me. I saw it. I saw the light." My stomach twisted. "What did you see?" I demanded. He took a moment to catch his breath. "I was driving down the road. It looked like it wanted me to follow it." He swallowed hard. "I turned off, but it didn't stop. It kept following me." "What happened next?" I asked, barely able to hold on to my nerves. "I don't know, man. Everything went black. My car just died. I was stuck." He looked at me, panicked. "You need to get out of here now." The waitress shook her head, her face pale. "You can't leave until morning. We have a safe room in the back." My mind raced. I knew I shouldn't stay, but leaving felt like inviting whatever was out there to get me. The man glanced out the window and his face drained of color. "It's coming." I turned to look and froze. The light had found me. It pulsed in the darkness, brightening the lot, illuminating the diner. My heart hammered in my chest. "What is that?" I asked, but my voice barely registered over the hum of dread filling the room. Then everything went dark. The power flickered, leaving us in near pitch black. Screams erupted around me, and I stumbled into the back, my mind racing. As I reached for the door, I hesitated. I needed answers. But would I regret uncovering the truth? I clenched my fists, driven by fear and curiosity. I had to know what was waiting outside. I stepped into the back room, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty. I fumbled for the light switch, praying for even a dim glow to cut through the darkness. My fingers brushed the wall, feeling the rough texture, but the lights didn't come on. I needed to know what was happening outside. "Stay close to the wall," someone whispered behind me. It was the panicked man, his breath still heavy. "We need to find a way to the back door." "What if it's out there?" I asked. "I don't care," he replied, his voice shaky but resolute. "I'm not waiting to be trapped. We have to at least peek and see if we can make a run for it." I had never thought I'd be considering running through the dark while being hunted by an unknown force. But the urge to escape was stronger than my fear. I nodded slowly and crept toward the door, my heart racing with every step. I was a few feet away when I heard a distinct click. The door to the diner swung open. A tall figure filled the frame, backlit by the eerie glow from outside. My breath caught in my throat. "It's here," I gasped, panic surging through me. The figure stepped inside, revealing a man with a rugged appearance. He had dirt smudged across his cheeks and wild eyes. "You need to help me," he shouted. "It's—" Something bright flashed behind him, illuminating the room. I caught a glimpse of the light from outside, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. The man froze. "Run!" I shouted, urging him to escape the light's grip. But he hesitated, staring back into the unknown. Suddenly, chaos erupted. The waitress, clutching the edge of the counter, screamed for everyone to stay calm. "The safe room now!" she yelled, trying to corral us. The tension in the diner escalated. The other customers were still huddled together, eyes wide and mouths silent. They looked up to see the glowing light creeping closer, shifting shapes that flickered like reflections in shattered glass. "There's no way out," the man shouted. "It's blocking the exits." My mind raced. In an instant, an idea sparked. "The kitchen," I shouted, grabbing the panicked man's arm. "We can slip out through the back." We hurried through the cramped hallway, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the tiled floor. I pushed open the door to the kitchen and nearly tripped over a stack of boxes. The smell of grease and burnt coffee assaulted my senses, grounding me in a strange way. The back door was just ahead, but I could hear the light outside buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. There was no turning back now. I glanced back to see if anyone was following us, but the panic had settled into a haunting silence. That's when I saw it. In the flickering light, there was a shadow moving beyond the glass door. "It's not just light," I said, realizing, filled with dread. "It's something more." I pulled the door open, and the cacophony of the outside world washed over me. "Go!" I shouted, pushing my companion through, but as I stepped out, the brightness surrounded us, and everything went cold. All I could think was that I needed to understand what this thing wanted from me before it was too late. The frigid air hit me like a slap as I stumbled outside. The brightness engulfed everything, obscuring my vision. I squinted, trying to make sense of the chaos that surrounded us. My heart thundered in my ears, drowning out the sound of my own thoughts. "Where did he go?" I gasped, turning to look for the man I had pulled from the diner. Panic clawed at my gut when I saw nothing but shadows. The light swirled around, its glow almost liquid, threatening to draw me in. "Focus," I whispered to myself. I took a cautious step forward. I needed to see. In the distance, there were silhouettes darting between the trucks parked across the road. My mind raced again. What had I just unleashed? Then I caught movement, a figure darting behind a truck. I felt a glimmer of hope. "Hey!" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by the sound of the light buzzing. "Help!" The panicked man from the diner stumbled into view, but he was not alone. A second figure appeared behind him, a dark shape moving like smoke. It was watching us, its form shifting as if it were made of the eerie light itself. "Get back!" I yelled, instinctively reaching for his arm. But in that moment, something strange happened. The shadows around us began to pulse, expanding and contracting like they were alive. "It wants us," he stammered, backing away. "We have to move." I pulled him away just as the light flickered ominously. I glanced back, fear swelling in my chest. The shape was advancing, tendrils of light stretching toward us like hungry fingers. "Where do we go?" he shouted, his eyes wide. I was about to think of a plan when I noticed an old pickup truck parked a few feet from us. It looked abandoned and a bit rusty, but it was our only option. "Over there," I pointed, pushing him as we ran. The ground felt uneven beneath my feet, and I half expected something to spring from the shadows at any moment. We reached the truck, and I yanked the door open. It creaked loudly, making my heart race even faster. "Get in!" I yelled. I climbed in behind him and slammed the door shut. The cab was filled with the scent of stale smoke and something else, something metallic. "Do you know how to drive?" he panted, glancing nervously at the dashboard. "Barely," I admitted, "but I think we need to try." My hands shook as I fumbled with the old keys dangling from the ignition. Before I could turn them, a sudden bang sounded from outside. I jumped, my breath hitching in my throat. The thumping reverberated off the truck roof, and an oppressive silence followed. "Please, just start," I begged the engine. I turned the key and the truck sputtered to life. The sound was a brief relief, but it was quickly snatched away by another crashing noise close by. Then, everything went dark. The engine's roar was snuffed out. All I could see was black. Panic bubbled within me, and I realized the light had gone. But the darkness didn't bring comfort. It felt alive, wrapping around me like a shroud. "What's happening?" the man cried out, his voice trembling. I don't know, I exclaimed, starting to feel the fear creep back in. My hands patted down the dashboard, searching for something, anything to hold on to. Then, I remembered the flashlight the waitress had kept. I reached over to the glove compartment and yanked it open. My fingers found the cool metal. I turned it on, sending a beam spiraling into the darkness, illuminating the space around us. But my heart sank as the beam landed on something unexpected. A figure stood outside, still and silent, shrouded in shadows. And then it started to move toward us. The figure lurched forward, a twisted silhouette against the glow of my flashlight. My breath quickened as I fought the urge to scream. It was like something out of a horror movie, and yet it felt so real. I pressed back against the seat, my eyes glued to the dark mass creeping toward us. It's coming this way, I gasped, my mind racing. The man beside me was frozen in place, eyes wide with terror. Do something, he whispered urgently. I scrambled for the gear shift, my fingers slipping on the rusty metal. I had to move this truck, had to get us out of here. My heart raced as I shoved the gear into reverse. The headlights flickered to life, casting a harsh glow over the area outside. That's when I saw it. The figure stood inches from the driver's side window. Its form rippled as if made of liquid shadows, an unsettling blend of menace and curiosity. I could barely make out features in the darkness, but I could feel its gaze fixed on us. Go, go, the man shouted, a note of desperation in his voice. I slammed the gas pedal and the truck lurched backward. The sudden jolt threw us against our seats, but I barely registered the impact as my focus stayed locked on the looming figure. The headlights illuminated the area behind us, revealing more shapes emerging from the shadows. They formed a line, shifting and coiling, their movements erratic and unpredictable. Keep driving, my passenger yelled as panic surged through him. He was right, I had to escape this madness. I threw the gear into drive and gunned the engine, sending us barreling forward. The truck's tires screeched against the asphalt, and I could feel the dark figures chasing us, their forms blending into the night like smoke. With each second, hope faded and fear took its place. We can't outrun them, I shouted, trying to keep the quaver out of my voice. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Every instinct told me to get to safety, but I knew they wouldn't let us go easily. I glanced at the man beside me, who was now frantically scanning the surroundings. Is there anywhere we can hide? Maybe the diner, he suggested, trembling. A wave of dread washed over me. The diner felt like a death trap, but it was closer than anything else. I'll try. I veered the truck toward the direction of the diner, praying I wouldn't regret it. Just as we neared the entrance, I felt a sudden jolt from behind. It felt as if something had slammed against the tailgate. The truck swerved, and I fought to regain control. I pushed harder on the gas, determined to reach the safety of the diner before whatever was out there could catch us. Then, right before I entered, I caught sight of the figures in my mirrors. They had stopped. Their shadows loomed tall against the diner's exterior, flickering like flames. They didn't follow. I slammed the brakes, and the truck skidded to a halt. The silence in the cab was deafening, and dread began to creep back in. What were they? I stammered, my heart racing. I don't know, but we can't stay here, he replied, peering through the windshield. Then something caught my attention. A glimmer of light reflected off the diner windows. It had been there before, just out of view. Before I could question it, I realized the light was moving, and it was coming from inside the diner. The clattering of the truck's engine echoed in the stillness. My heart hammered, and I felt cold sweat trickle down my back. The man beside me held his breath, unwilling to break the uneasy silence. What's that light? He finally whispered, his voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. The light flickered again, casting strange shadows that danced across the diner's walls. It was soft, almost inviting, but my instincts screamed danger. Should we get out? I asked. But even as I said it, the thought felt ridiculous. What if it's a trap? He replied, glancing nervously at the windshield. What if those things are waiting for us to step out? I understood his fear. The shadowy figures outside had felt like a nightmare brought to life. But we couldn't just sit here. We had to make a decision. Let's at least check it out. If we stay here, those, whatever they are, could come back. I nodded, even though a part of me was screaming to drive away. We had to find out if the diner offered any safety or comfort. I took a deep breath, unbuckled my seatbelt, and edged the door open. The cold night air rushed in, and I immediately regretted my decision. "I'll stay near the truck," the man said, his face pale, "just in case." "Okay," I whispered, stepping out onto the gravel. My shoes crunched softly, and I winced at the sound. The diner loomed ahead, its windows reflecting the strange glow. I crept toward the entrance, the worn-out neon sign buzzing above. It flickered erratically, a mockery of the calm I desperately sought. Just as I reached for the door, it swung open on its own, revealing a dimly lit interior. A shiver ran down my spine as I peered inside. The tables were empty, but the kitchen light was on. The steady hum of the refrigerator was the only sound aside from the faint glimmer growing closer. "Hello?" I called, my voice wavering. No response. I hesitated, then stepped fully inside. The door swung shut behind me. In the center of the diner stood a figure silhouetted against the kitchen light. It looked human, but something was off. My pulse raced as the figure turned slightly, revealing a face obscured in shadow. "Help us," it whispered, the voice distorted, echoing in my mind. "Who are you?" I stammered. "I'm trapped. I need—" The voice faded, replaced by a low rumble that seemed to pulse through the air. I glanced back toward the door, uncertainty flooding me. "What is this?" I breathed, taking a cautious step back. My instincts screamed for me to escape, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure. Then, an ear-splitting crash sounded from outside. My breath hitched as I remembered the silhouette of darkness lingering outside the diner. They could be coming for me now. The figure turned toward the sound, its form flickering like the light overhead. "You need to choose," it said, its tone urgent. "You can't stay here. But if you go out—" I didn't catch the rest as another bang shook the entrance. Panic surged through me. I had to leave. I spun around, throwing the door open, flinging myself back into the night. The shadows from before were closer now. I could feel their presence, thick and heavy in the air. "Get back in the truck," I shouted, sprinting toward my companion who was still by the vehicle. He looked terrified, eyes wide as I reached him. And then, without warning, the diner lights went out. "We need to go now," I yelled, adrenaline coursing through me. But just as I turned to climb into the truck, something caught my eye, a figure darting between the trees. Someone, or something, was watching us. My heart sank. Nothing felt safe anymore. I grabbed the truck door, my breath quickening as I glanced back toward the diner. The shadows were shifting, blending with the trees, but the flicker of that figure remained etched in my mind. I could still hear its voice, pleading, "Did you see that?" My companion's voice broke through my thoughts. "Yeah, we need to move," I snapped, my eyes darting to the darkness surrounding us. The weight of the empty diner pressed on my chest. He jumped into the passenger seat, fumbling with the seatbelt. I climbed in, starting the engine with shaking hands. The truck roared to life, a comforting sound against the eerie silence, but I felt no relief. I backed up quickly, my eyes scanning the tree line. Every shadow seemed to twist and writhe with intent. "What was that thing?" he asked, his voice trembling more now that we were safely inside the truck. "I don't know," I replied, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten, "but we can't stick around to find out." As I turned the truck around, my headlights swept over the diner. The place looked desolate now, a haunted shell. Then I froze. In the light I spotted someone, standing at the diner's entrance. An outline of a person, the glow behind them casting an ominous silhouette. I squinted, trying to make out details. "Drive!" my friend shouted, his panic infectious. "No, just wait." But before I could finish my sentence, the figure stepped forward. A woman. Her eyes glimmered in the darkness, and she raised her hand as if pleading for help. "Please," she cried, her voice breaking through the silence. "You can't leave me." "What the hell?" I muttered, my heart racing. Is she real? I don't know, my companion stammered, tightly gripping the armrest. My instincts were at war. Everything in me screamed to escape, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we might be the only ones who could help her. Yet something deep down told me she was another trap. The woman took another step closer, her mouth forming the words, "You have to believe me, they'll come for you too." Suddenly, the diner's lights brightened, illuminating her face. Her skin was pale and slick, almost glistening, her hair tangled. A wave of unease crashed over me. The shadows behind her twitched restlessly, as if alive. "This isn't good," I muttered, adrenaline spiking again. "Get out of here," my friend yelled. "Engine it up, let's go." Just as I made the decision to drive away, a shriek rang out from the darkness behind her. It echoed through the night, electrifying the air and set my teeth on edge. "Now!" he shouted again, panic coloring his voice. I slammed the truck into gear, ready to lurch forward. But as I pulled away, one last chilling glance back revealed the woman's face twisted in distress, as shadows surged around her, engulfing her in an instant. "They're coming!" I shouted, flooring the gas pedal. Trees whipped past in a blur. My heart raced as fear clawed at me. Whatever terror had emerged from the diner was now less than a mile away. But then it hit me. What had she meant by they? Who were they? And how did she know we'd be in danger? Those questions consumed my thoughts as I drove deeper into the night, uncertainty looming with every turn. A sudden crash echoed from the woods beside us, jolting me forward. "What was that?" I gasped, my knuckles turning white on the steering wheel. I didn't have time to respond. I pushed the gas harder, desperate to flee from whatever nightmare was hunting us. But another figure flashed in the darkness right beside the truck. I held my breath, realizing we were far from safe. I drove down the highway, the engine groaning beneath the strain of my pounding heart. Shadows flitted past the windshield, taunting me, reminding me of the terror I had barely escaped from. The darkness felt alive, as if it were pursuing me, reaching out with clawed fingers just beyond my sight. The road ahead twisted and turned, each curve sharpening my anxiety. I felt the weight of questions pressing down on me. Who were those figures? Were they real? Or was I losing my mind to fear? And what about the woman in the diner? Had she truly been trapped? Or was she another component in a dark game beyond my understanding? Somewhere between panic and numbness, I spotted lights flickering ahead. A roadside motel with the neon sign buzzing fitfully. A weak sense of hope stirred within me. It could be a chance to regroup, to find safety for a moment. I swung my truck into the parking lot, tires skidding on the gravel. As I climbed out, a sense of surreal calm filled the air around me, an eerie contrast to the chaos swirling in my mind. The motel's office door creaked open, and a weary-looking clerk stepped out, blinking in the harsh glow of the neon light. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might summon something from the night. "What do you know?" I pressed, desperate for information. He glanced back into the office, and I sensed a heaviness in the air, a knowing that chilled me more than the night. "Drivers come through here all the time, sharing stories about things they saw. The lights, the shadows, they're not just figments of their imagination." He shuffled closer, his eyes darting to the road. "If you saw the light, you have to get off this road. It's never truly gone. It stalks those who don't understand." "But what does it want?" I asked, my voice rising. He hesitated, the shadows behind him flickering like ghosts. "That's the question no one seems to answer. Every time someone gets close enough to confront it, they vanish. And those shadows? They're not just manifestations. They're part of something ancient. A cycle that—" A thunderous crash interrupted him, coming from the woods. I turned, my breath catching as I saw silhouettes moving towards us, weaving through the trees just out of reach of the motel lights. "Get inside," he barked, grabbing my arm. I didn't protest. Survival took precedence over questions. We dove back into the office, and the clerk slammed the door shut. The pounding outside was merciless. I could feel the vibrations echoing through the walls, the force of whatever was out there pushing against the fragile barrier. "Lock it," he urged, his face etched with dread. I scrambled to secure the flimsy lock while my pulse raced. I could hear it, the sound of something clawing at the door, moving just beyond the safety of our makeshift sanctuary. Then, silence. A drawn-out stillness enveloped us, thick and suffocating. I could barely bring myself to breathe. "What did you see?" he asked, desperation creeping into his tone. My mind flashed back to the figure at the diner, her pleading eyes. I don't know if it was real or not, but she wanted help. And then... My voice trailed off as dread pooled in my stomach. And then the shadows were everywhere. He nodded gravely. "Remember, if you sense it's around, it's already too late. You have to see. They can't be invited in." I was about to question him when the noise returned, a clattering echo of footsteps slamming against the door. The shadows pressed against the windows, more palpable now. The hotel clerk's expression hardened with realization. "Grab a light," he commanded, pointing to a flashlight tucked behind the counter. I snatched it and aimed the beam toward the door just as a ripple of movement blurred the edges of the shadows. I felt my instincts scream that I had to act, but what was there to do? "Listen to me," the clerk said urgently. "There's a reason I'm still here. The shadows, the light, they want something. You need to find a way to make it stop before it finds you." I could feel the weight of his words settling in my chest, but I had no idea how to combat something that operated beyond logic. An idea flickered in my mind, fragile as a candle flame. What if we confront it? His eyes widened. "No. That's madness." "Then what's the alternative?" I shot back. "Just waiting for it to come and take us?" Before he could respond, the door burst open with explosive force, flinging debris into the air. A shape surged forward, illuminated briefly by my flashlight. It was a swirling mass filled with glaring lights, contorted frameworks that seemed to breathe with an unfathomable hunger. "No!" the clerk shouted, stumbling back. I took a single step forward, the beam of light wavering as I aimed it at the encroaching darkness. I hoped the light would hold, would push them back. But the shapes weren't just shadows anymore. They were alive and aware. A cacophony of whispers filled the air, brushing against the edges of my consciousness. They were all around me, echoing my fears and confusions. Shapes danced in the perimeter of my vision. I backed up, searching for an escape. Then the light flickered, and I suddenly found myself standing outside, alone with the world shifting into black and white. "Run!" My screams called back the clerk. But it was too late. He was enveloped in shadows, too consumed by the fate I had narrowly avoided. But I had to run. The light surged around me, and though I couldn't understand what the darkness wanted, I knew one thing. This nightmare wouldn't end until I could confront the core of it. Back on the road, my truck awaited, the only vessel left to escape this reality. With both heart and mind in turmoil, I collided into the driver's seat with one goal: to flee into the dark. As I peeled away, the shadowy figures lingered at the motel, unyielding specters, tempting me for answers I wasn't ready to confront. I drove on through the night, unsure if I'd earned my freedom, or if I would simply carry the questions and the horrors with me as I moved into the unknown.